My name is Ashley, and at 28 years old, I never imagined my biggest secret would explode like this. Standing in my parents' dining room this Easter Sunday, I watched my sister Jennifer's face contort with shock as she held up my bank statement, the seven-figure balance making her hands tremble. The entire Morrison family fell silent, their mocking laughter dying as they stared at the discount rack girl they'd humiliated for years. Just 3 hours earlier, I'd arrived expecting another painful family gathering, never knowing everything would change forever. Before we dive into this incredible story of family betrayal and sweet revenge, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Are you spending Easter with family too? Please hit that like button if you've ever felt like the black sheep of your family, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories of triumph over toxic relationships. Trust me, what happens next will leave you absolutely speechless. So let's jump right into how a simple Easter dinner turned into the most satisfying revenge I never planned. Growing up in the Morrison household meant understanding your place in the hierarchy, and mine was firmly at the bottom. My parents, Robert and Linda Morrison, had built their entire identity around their children's achievements, but somehow I never made the cut. My older sister Jennifer, now 31 and a successful lawyer, held the crown as the family's golden child. She'd graduated from Harvard Law, married David, another attorney, who came from old money, and lived in a sprawling colonial house that my parents never tired of praising. Then there was Michael, my 26-year-old brother, fresh out of medical school, and engaged to Brittany, a pharmaceutical heiress who looked at me like something she'd scrape off her designer shoes. And then there was me, Ashley, the family disappointment. To them, I was just a simple graphic designer who shopped at discount stores and drove a 15-year-old Honda Civic that coughed more than it purred. The nicknames started in high school when I refused to beg my parents for designer clothes like my siblings did. Discount Rack Girl was Jennifer's favorite, always delivered with that special sneer she'd perfected by age 12. Thrift Store Queen came from Michael, while my parents preferred the more subtle but equally cutting Our Little Penny Pincher. Extended family members had their own variations. Aunt Carol called me Coupon Ashley after catching me using coupons at the grocery store once, and Uncle Ted would joke about setting up a GoFundMe for my wardrobe crisis. What they didn't know, what I'd hidden for nearly a decade, was that their discount rack girl was worth more than all of them combined. The truth started when I was 19, sitting in my dorm room after my parents had just informed me they were redirecting my college fund to help Michael get through medical school without loans. "You understand, sweetie," my mother had said over the phone, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Michael's education is an investment in the family's future. You can always take out loans for your little art degree." That night, fueled by rage and determination, I took the $500 I'd saved from my campus job and started my first online business. It was a simple digital design service creating logos and marketing materials for small businesses. Within 6 months, I was making more than my work-study job. Within a year, I'd hired my first virtual assistant. By the time I graduated, I was running 3 profitable online businesses and had just closed my first $1 million year. But I'd learned something valuable watching my family dynamics. Money didn't just change people, it revealed who they really were underneath. I watched how they fawned over Jennifer's success, how they bragged about Michael to anyone who would listen, how they measured love in dollar signs and achievement certificates. So I made a choice. I kept my success hidden, maintaining my image as the struggling artist, the family project, who needed their pity more than their respect. The deception wasn't just about money. I'd built an entirely different life in the city 2 hours away from my family's suburban kingdom. My penthouse apartment overlooked Central Park. My garage housed a collection of luxury cars I dreamed about as a child, and my walk-in closet contained designer pieces that would make Jennifer's prized wardrobe look like actual discount rack finds. But when I visited family, I carefully curated my appearance. Old Navy jeans, Target blouses, shoes from Payless before they closed. I drove the Honda, parked my Mercedes in a private garage across town. The elaborate deception might seem extreme, but it served a purpose. It showed me who really cared about Ashley the person versus Ashley the potential ATM. It revealed that my family's love came with price tags attached, that their affection was conditional on what you could do for the Morrison family image. Every holiday, every family gathering became a test of their true nature, and year after year they failed spectacularly. My success hadn't come easily. Those first years were brutal 18-hour days building websites, negotiating with clients, learning everything from coding to international tax law, through YouTube videos and online courses. While Jennifer was getting her law degree funded by our parents, and Michael was coasting through pre-med on their dime, I was sleeping 4 hours a night and living on ramen noodles by choice, not necessity. Every dollar I earned went back into growing my businesses. By 25, I owned 5 companies, 2 digital marketing agencies, an e-commerce platform that specialized in sustainable fashion, a software development firm, and a venture capital fund focused on female entrepreneurs. My name might not have been on any Forbes lists hidden behind LLCs and holding companies, but my bank accounts told a different story. Last year alone, my businesses generated $47 million in revenue. Easter morning arrived with the kind of perfect spring weather that made my deception feel almost cruel. As I stood in my penthouse bedroom, I looked at my 2 lives laid out before me. On the left, a stunning Versace dress I'd bought for a charity gala next week. On the right, a floral sundress from Target's clearance rack, complete with the bright orange sale sticker I'd deliberately left on to sell the performance. The choice was automatic muscle memory from years of playing this character. I dressed methodically, each item carefully chosen to reinforce their image of poor, struggling Ashley. The dress hung a bit loose, suggesting I couldn't afford proper tailoring. My shoes were scuffed ballet flats from 2 seasons ago. My jewelry consisted of the same simple silver chain I'd worn since college, a gift from my grandmother before she passed. The only authentic thing I wore, actually, since everything else was costume for the show I'd perform today. The drive to my parents' house in Westchester took exactly 93 minutes in my Honda time I used to review the latest acquisition documents my CFO had sent. Morrison Enterprises, the holding company nobody knew, belonged to their disappointment of a daughter, was about to acquire a revolutionary biotech firm. The irony wasn't lost on me that while my doctor brother would spend his career working for others, I'd soon own companies that employed hundreds of doctors. I parked down the street as always, not wanting to block the driveway where Jennifer and Michael would display their luxury vehicles like peacocks showing their feathers. The walk to the house gave me time to shift into character, to remember the hunched shoulders, the apologetic smile, the quiet voice they expected from their family failure. The house blazed with Easter decorations that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. My mother answered the door in a St. John's suit that screamed old money, her smile faltering slightly when she saw me. "Oh, Ashley, you're early, and you wore that dress. How nice." The pause before that dress stretched like a canyon between us. "Well, come in. Jennifer has wonderful news to share later." Inside the house hummed with the energy of a family preparing to celebrate their chosen children. Jennifer held court in the living room, her massive diamond engagement ring upgrade, catching the light as she gestured dramatically about some case she'd won. David sat beside her, checking his Rolex every few minutes as if time moved differently for important people like him. Michael and Brittany occupied the love seat, their matching tennis whites, suggesting they'd come from the country club where my family had pointedly never added me to their membership. I placed my contribution on the kitchen counter, 24 homemade sugar cookies shaped like Easter eggs decorated with careful precision at 3 a.m. My mother glanced at them with barely concealed disdain. How crafty. Though I do wish you'd asked what to bring. Jennifer's caterer has prepared a magnificent spread. The morning unfolded in familiar patterns. Jennifer regaled everyone with stories of her latest courtroom victory, while our parents hung on every word like she was reciting scripture. Michael discussed his residency placement at Mount Sinai, dropping names of famous doctors I actually knew personally through my medical investment portfolio. Nobody asked about my work, my life, my anything. I was furniture with a pulse necessary for family photos, but otherwise ignorable. The only bright spot came when my teenage cousin Emma found me on the back patio, her eyes red from crying. At 16, Emma was starting to experience the Morrison family treatment herself. Her crime: she preferred art to academics, poetry to profit margins. "Aunt Ashley," she whispered, glancing around to make sure nobody heard her speaking to the family pariah. "Mom says I'm wasting my potential wanting to be a writer. She wants me to give up my creative writing summer camp for SAT prep." I pulled her into a hug, feeling the familiar ache of recognition. "Your potential isn't for anyone else to define," I told her quietly. "Remember that." I slipped her my business card, the one with just my personal email. "If you ever need anything, and I mean anything, you reach out. Promise." She nodded, tucking the card deep in her pocket like contraband. Which in this family, it essentially was. Associating too closely with the family failure could be contagious after all. Back inside, the formal Easter lunch preparation began. Jennifer made a show of her new Hermes bag, the 20th in her collection. "David surprised me with it last week," she gushed, though I noticed David's jaw tighten at the mention. "It's from their exclusive collection. There's a 2-year waiting list, but David has connections. Must be nice to afford such beautiful things." Brittany added, her voice honeyed poison as she looked pointedly at my Target dress. "Some of us are just more fortunate, I suppose." "Ashley, where did you get your dress? It's so practical." I smiled, my practice smile, the one that never quite reached my eyes. "Target. On clearance. 40% off." The room erupted in the kind of laughter that wasn't meant to include you, but to remind you that you were the joke. Even Emma looked uncomfortable, shooting me an apologetic glance from across the room. I endured it as I always did, playing my part while my phone buzzed insistently in my pocket. The biotech acquisition was moving faster than expected. My legal team needed approval on several key points. $50 million waiting on my signature while my family mocked me for saving $16 on a dress. The dinner table was set with my mother's prized china, the pattern she'd inherited from her mother and never let us forget cost more per place setting than most people's car payments. I was relegated to my usual seat at the far end between Uncle Ted, who always drank too much, and Aunt Carol's empty chair because she was perpetually running late. The seating arrangement wasn't accidental. Even at family gatherings, I was positioned as far from the center of attention as possible. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. The biotech deal had hit a snag with regulatory approval, and my team needed immediate guidance. Each vibration felt like a countdown to disaster, not for the deal, which would close regardless, but for my carefully maintained facade. Jennifer kept shooting suspicious glances my way, her lawyer instincts picking up on my distraction. "Ashley, really?" My mother sighed as my phone buzzed again. "Can't you silence that thing? What could possibly be so important? Is the coffee shop calling to change your shift?" The table chuckled at her joke. I didn't work at a coffee shop, had never worked at a coffee shop, but the truth had never mattered in their narrative. I was whatever they needed me to be to feel superior. "I'm sorry," I murmured, standing. "I need to take this. It's about a project deadline." Jennifer's eyes narrowed. "On Easter Sunday, what kind of rinky-dink design firm makes you work holidays?" I didn't answer, just escaped to the bathroom down the hall. The call was critical. The FDA had questions about our biotech acquisition target's latest drug trial data. My CEO needed authorization to release additional documentation. As I spoke in hushed tones, approving the release and authorizing our legal team to handle the regulatory response, I didn't notice I'd left my everyday purse on the bathroom counter. It wasn't my usual thrift store find. In my rush this morning, I'd grabbed the wrong bag, my Hermes Birkin in classic black, the one I'd bought to celebrate my first 8-figure year. Inside the contents of my real life lay exposed my Black American Express Centurion card, my JP Morgan Reserve card. Business cards reading Ashley Morrison, CEO, Morrison Enterprises. And worst of all, the quarterly statement from my private wealth management firm showing a balance that would make lottery winners weep. I ended the call and hurried back to the dining room, my mind still on regulatory approvals and acquisition strategies. It wasn't until I sat down that I realized my mistake. My purse. My real purse. In my pocket, I felt my keys, but the bag itself was nowhere to be seen. Looking for something. Jennifer's voice cut through the dinner chatter like a blade. She stood in the doorway, holding my Birkin like evidence in a court case. Her face had gone pale, then red, then something beyond color entirely. I can explain. I started, but she was already dumping the contents on the pristine Easter tablecloth right between the ham and my mother's famous asparagus casserole. The black cards scattered like tarot cards predicting doom. The bank statement unfolded, its numbers visible to everyone. The business cards landed face up, my name and title stark against the white linen. But it was the acquisition documents that really did it, the ones clearly marking the $50 million purchase price. The silence that followed was complete, broken only by Uncle Ted dropping his wine glass. "What is this?" My mother's voice came out strangled. "Ashley, what is this?" Jennifer found her voice first, of course. She always did. "It's lies, that's what it is. Some kind of sick joke. Ashley's trying to, I don't know, impress us with fake documents." But David, the lawyer, was already examining the papers with professional interest. "These aren't fake," he said slowly. "That's the official seal of Morrison Enterprises. These are legitimate SEC filings." He looked up at me, his expression shifting from confusion to something like awe. "You're buying Genetech Solutions." Michael grabbed the bank statement, his hands shaking. "This can't be real. Ashley works as a freelance designer. She drives that piece of junk Honda. She shops at thrift stores. Ain't core. By choice," I said quietly, finding my voice at last. "I shop at thrift stores by choice." Brittany laughed high and hysterical. "You're saying you have $47 million in just this one account, and you choose to dress like that." My father hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. He stared at the evidence of my success like it was written in a foreign language. Finally, he looked up at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before in his eyes, rage mixed with humiliation. "How long?" he asked. "How long have you been lying to us?" "I never lied," I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "You never asked about my actual work. You assumed, and I let you." Jennifer snatched one of my business cards, reading it over and over like the words might change. "CEO, you're nobody's CEO. You're our family's charity case. You're discount rack girl." "I'm both," I said simply. "I'm the discount rack girl who built an empire while you were laughing at my clearance stickers." The explosion that followed was immediate and volcanic. Everyone talked at once, voices rising in accusation and demand. How dare I humiliate them? How could I let them worry about me? Why would I hide such success from my own family? But it was the shift that happened next that truly revealed everything. The anger morphed into something else: calculation. I could see it in their eyes as they looked at the bank statement again, as they processed what this meant. Their failure of a daughter wasn't just successful. She was wealthy beyond their wildest dreams. The transformation was swift and brutal. Within minutes of discovering my wealth, my family shed their masks of superiority and revealed the greedy monsters beneath. My father, Robert Morrison, the man who'd built his identity on being a self-made success, stood up slowly, his face darkening with each passing second. "You owe us," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Do you have any idea what we've spent on you over the years? The food, the shelter, the clothes." "Clothes, you mocked," I reminded him. "Food you grudgingly shared while telling me I should be grateful. Shelter that came with constant reminders that I was a disappointment. My mother's tears were perfectly timed as always. Linda Morrison could cry on cue better than any actress. How could you do this to us, Ashley? We're your family. We worried about you, constantly lost sleep, thinking about your future. And all this time you were playing some sick game. The only game being played was yours," I shot back. "The one where you used me as a punchline to make yourselves feel better." Jennifer had recovered from her initial shock and was now in full lawyer mode. "This is fraud," she announced. "Emotional fraud. You've deliberately deceived us for years, causing intentional emotional distress. I could sue you for this." David nodded eagerly beside her. "She's right. There's legal precedent. You've gained financially while allowing your family to suffer emotionally, thinking you were destitute. Suffer." I laughed, the sound bitter in my throat. "You suffered because you thought I was poor. That says everything about who you really are." Michael slammed his fist on the table, making the china jump. "You could have paid for my medical school. Do you know how much debt I'm in? $300,000, Ashley. And you just sat there letting me take out loans while you had millions. The same way you sat there when Mom and Dad gave you my college fund." I asked. "Funny how your memory works, Michael." Brittany was already on her phone, furiously typing. "I'm telling everyone," she hissed. "The whole country club will know what kind of person you really are. A liar who betrayed her own family." The irony was staggering. They were calling me a liar for not flaunting wealth they would have either mocked or tried to steal. But the real escalation came when Uncle Ted, now thoroughly drunk, decided to weigh in. "Family takes care of family," he slurred, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You got all that money you should be sharing. That's what decent people do." "Decent people don't lock their niece out of family events because she doesn't wear designer labels," I countered. Aunt Carol had finally arrived just in time for the show. Within minutes, she was updated and adding her voice to the chorus of demands. "I can't believe you let us struggle while you were living like some kind of tech princess," she wailed, though I couldn't recall a single time she'd ever struggled with anything beyond choosing between Cabo and Turks and Caicos for vacation. The demands came fast and furious. Dad calculated what I owed for 18 years of raising me, arriving at a figure that would have been laughable if it weren't so pathetic. Mom insisted I should buy them a new house. A proper one befitting our status as parents of such a successful daughter. Jennifer demanded I pay off her law school loans retroactively with interest. Michael wanted his loans paid plus a down payment on a Manhattan apartment, plus a car that would reflect his standing as a doctor. But it was when they started making plans for my money that things turned truly ugly. "We'll need to set up a family trust," Dad announced, as if it were already decided. "I'll manage it, of course. My experience in finance makes me the logical choice." "And we'll need monthly allowances," Jennifer added. "I'm thinking $50,000 each as a starting point. The first thing we should do is move Ashley back home," Mom suggested. "She clearly can't be trusted to make decisions on her own. We'll help her manage everything properly." I stared at them in disbelief. "Move back home, I'm 28 years old. Age has nothing to do with it," Dad said dismissively. "You've proven you can't be trusted, hiding this from your family. What else are you hiding? Drugs, gambling." The accusations flew. Maybe I was involved in illegal activities. Perhaps I'd gained my money through nefarious means. Surely someone who would deceive their family was capable of anything. The narrative shifted minute by minute, painting me as everything from a criminal mastermind to a mentally unstable person who needed their protection. "We should call Dr. Patterson," Mom suggested, referring to the psychiatrist who'd prescribed her Xanax. "Maybe Ashley's having some kind of breakdown. This secrecy isn't normal." "I agree," Jennifer said quickly. "In fact, I think we need to consider power of attorney. For her own protection, of course." That's when I realized they weren't just angry. They were plotting. The looks they exchanged, the way they positioned themselves between me and the exits, it all became clear. This wasn't a family dinner anymore. It was a shakedown. "Nobody's leaving until we sort this out," Uncle Ted announced, moving to block the dining room entrance. "Family business stays in the family." "Are you seriously holding me hostage?" I asked, though the answer was obvious. "Don't be dramatic," Mom scolded. "We're just having a family discussion about your future. Our future." My phone buzzed again. This time it was my head of security, wondering why I hadn't checked in. I had protocols for exactly this kind of situation, though I'd never imagined I'd need them with my own family. "I need to answer this," I said, reaching for my phone. Jennifer snatched it from my hand. "No more secrets. No more hiding. We're your family, Ashley. You owe us the truth. You owe us everything." The entitlement was breathtaking. Years of dismissing me, mocking me, treating me as less than, and now they felt I owed them. The delusion was complete, but worse was yet to come. "I've already texted the family group chat," Aunt Carol announced proudly. "Everyone knows now. Cousin Rita, Aunt Sarah, the whole extended family. They're all asking why you've been so selfish." My phone, still in Jennifer's grip, lit up with notification after notification. The family telegraph was in full swing, and I could only imagine the lies being spread. Within minutes, relatives I hadn't spoken to in years would be demanding their share of my success. "You know what?" Michael said suddenly. "I bet there are others. Other accounts, other businesses. Someone this deceptive wouldn't show us everything at once." It was like watching sharks smell blood. The frenzy intensified as they imagined even greater wealth hidden away. Dad started making calls to his lawyer friends. Jennifer began drafting what looked like legal documents on her phone. The transformation from family dinner to criminal conspiracy was complete. I'd spent years building my empire in secret, but I'd also spent years preparing for this moment. Every slight, every insult, every moment of deliberate cruelty had been documented. Every financial impropriety, every skeleton in their closets, every dirty secret they thought was buried, I had it all. The difference between them and me wasn't just money. It was that I understood the value of information. "You want to talk about owing people?" I said, my voice cutting through their plotting. "Let's talk about what you all really owe." I pulled out my backup phone from my dress pocket, the one they hadn't noticed. With a few taps, I connected to the dining room's smart TV, a gift I'd anonymously given my parents last Christmas. The screen flickered to life, and suddenly, everyone was staring at a spreadsheet. "Jennifer." I began, my voice steady as steel. "Would you like to explain to everyone about the $150,000 missing from the Patterson Trust Fund you managed?" My sister's face drained of color. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really?" I swiped to the next screen, bank records, forged signatures, a clear trail of embezzlement. "Because your senior partners at Whitman & Associates certainly seemed interested when my forensic accountant sent them this information." "Oh, that's right. You don't know about that yet. Check your email Monday morning." David jumped to his feet. "You can't threaten us like this." "Threat." I smiled, the expression sharp enough to cut. "David, would you prefer I discuss your two other families? The one in Boston with your son who just turned 3, or the one in Miami with the twins?" The gasp from Jennifer was worth every dollar I'd paid the private investigator. "What? Oh, he didn't mention those." I swiped again, showing photos, birth certificates, even Christmas cards David had sent to his other children. "Funny thing about bigamy, it's still illegal in all 50 states. The room erupted, but I wasn't done, not even close. "Michael, you want to talk about medical school debt?" I asked, turning to my brother. "Let's discuss how you really passed organic chemistry. Should I call Professor Martinez? I'm sure she'd love to know that her star student paid Brad Coleman to take his final exam." Brittany tried to interject, but I had something for her too. "Brittany, sweetheart, does Michael know about your little pharmaceutical side business? The one where you've been selling samples from your father's company to that website? I believe that's a federal crime, isn't it?" My parents, the ringleaders of this circus, weren't spared either. "Dad, should we discuss the Morrison investment fund you've been running? The one where you've been taking money from elderly clients and gambling it on cryptocurrency? I have recordings of you bragging about it to Uncle Ted." "You recorded me." He stood up, his face purple with rage. "And Mom." I continued, ignoring his outburst. "The country club must not know about your interesting fundraising techniques. Skimming from the charity auctions you chair? That's bold, even for you. Though I suppose needing to pay off $70,000 in online gambling debts makes people desperate." The evidence kept flowing across the screen. Every crime, every deception, every moment they thought they'd gotten away with something, I had it all. Years of patient gathering, of waiting for this moment. "You little bitch!" Jennifer snarled, lunging for my phone. But I was already dialing. "Yes, this is Ashley Morrison at the Westchester House. My family is holding me against my will and attempting to extort money from me." "Yes, I'll stay on the line." "You called the police!" Mom shrieked. "On your own family!" The family that just tried to imprison me and steal my money? I asked. Yes, I did. Just like you called the police on me when I was 16, and you thought I'd stolen $20 from your wallet. Remember, it turned out to be in your other purse, but you let them handcuff me first. While we waited for law enforcement, I placed another call. Marcus. Yes, it's happening. Please send the cease and desist orders we discussed, and release the information to the relevant authorities. Yes, all of it. Marcus Chen was my attorney, a pit bull in Armani, who'd been preparing for this possibility for 3 years. Within minutes, emails were flying to law firms, medical boards, and various regulatory agencies. Ashley, please. Mom begged, her tears real now. We can work this out as a family. Aunt, family. Emma, who'd been silent throughout the chaos, finally spoke up. You people don't know what family means. Ashley's the only one who's ever treated me like I matter. She's been paying for my therapy, my art classes. Everything you said was a waste of money. The revelation that I'd been helping Emma sent them into fresh hysterics, but the sirens were already audible. My family scrambled, trying to hide evidence of their attempted imprisonment, but it was too late. They'd shown their true colors, and there was no taking it back. When the police arrived, the scene was almost comedic. My dignified family reduced to squabbling criminals, each trying to blame the others. The officers took statements, examined the evidence of unlawful detention, and made it clear that charges could be filed. This is all a misunderstanding, Dad tried to explain. We're family. We were just having a discussion. A discussion where you blocked the exits and took my phone, I asked. Where you demanded money and threatened to have me declared mentally incompetent. The officers were not amused. Neither was Marcus when he arrived with a full legal team, documents in hand. The cease and desist orders were comprehensive, forbidding my family from contacting me, discussing me publicly, or making any claims on my assets. This is ridiculous, Jennifer protested, even as her phone rang with what was undoubtedly her law firm calling about the embezzlement evidence. You can't just cut us off. We're blood. Blood. I laughed, the sound hollow. You bled me dry emotionally for years. You made me feel worthless, unlovable, less than human because I didn't meet your standards. And the second you found out I had money, you tried to steal it. That's not blood. That's vampirism. As my family stood in their designer clothes, surrounded by police officers and lawyers, I decided it was time for the ultimate truth. They thought they knew the extent of my success, but they'd only seen the tip of the iceberg. You know what the funny thing is? I asked, pulling up one final presentation on my phone. You're not just losing access to my money. You're losing so much more than you could possibly imagine. The screen showed a photo of me with a man they'd never seen before, both of us in formal wear, at what was clearly a high society event. Alexander Chen, tech billionaire, founder of 3 unicorn startups, and the man I'd been secretly engaged to for 6 months. Meet my fiancé, I said simply. Alexander Chen. You might know him from the Fortune 500 list, number 47 if you're counting. The collective intake of breath was audible. Even the police officers looked impressed. We met at a charity gala 2 years ago. I continued. The kind of event you never invited me to because I might embarrass you with my discount rack dress. Funny thing is, I was the keynote speaker. My foundation had just donated $10 million to childhood literacy programs. Alexander had been watching everything through my home security system, a network of cameras I'd had installed 3 years ago when I started documenting my family's behavior. He was already en route with his own security team, having seen enough to understand why I'd kept him secret from my toxic relatives. A billionaire, Brittany whispered. You're marrying a billionaire. I'm marrying a man who loves me for exactly who I am, I corrected. Someone who's never once called me discount rack girl or suggested I wasn't good enough. Someone who understands that worth isn't measured in designer labels or prestigious degrees. Jennifer Ever, the lawyer, tried one last desperate gambit. If you're getting married, that's marital assets, family money. We could have a claim. Marcus shut that down immediately. Ms. Morrison's prenuptial agreement is already filed. Her assets remain entirely separate. Not that it matters, since you have no legal claim to anything regardless. The revelations kept coming. I showed them my real life, the one they'd never bothered to imagine. The charity galas where I was honored for my philanthropy. The tech conferences where I gave keynotes on female entrepreneurship. The hospital wings named after my anonymous donations. The scholarship funds I'd established for first-generation college students. "This is what you missed while you were mocking my clothes," I said. "I've helped thousands of people achieve their dreams. I've created jobs, funded research, supported causes that matter. And I did it all while you thought I was worthless." Emma moved to stand beside me, her choice clear. "I want to leave with Ashley," she announced. "I'm 16. I can petition for emancipation with cause, and I think we have plenty of cause here." "You're not taking my daughter," Aunt Carol shrieked. "I'm not taking her," I said. "I'm offering her a choice. The same choice I never had. She can stay here with people who want to crush her spirit and mold her into something she's not, or she can come with me and become whoever she wants to be." Emma's answer was to hug me tightly, tears streaming down her face. The doorbell rang and Alexander walked in tall and imposing, with the kind of presence that commanded instant respect. He surveyed the scene, took in my family's shocked faces, and moved directly to my side. "Are you all right?" he asked, ignoring everyone else. "Better now," I said, meaning it. "So this is the family that made you feel worthless." He looked at them with undisguised contempt. "The ones who called you names and made you think you weren't enough. Alexander Chen." Dad breathed, recognizing him from business journals. "The Alexander Chen. The one who's marrying your daughter." Alexander confirmed. "The one you don't deserve. The one who built an empire while you were busy tearing her down." What happened next was a cascade of consequences I'd set in motion months ago, knowing this day might come. Jennifer's phone rang again, her law firm informing her she was suspended pending investigation. Michael received a call from the medical board about his cheating allegations. Dad's client started calling, having received anonymous tips about their investment funds. Mom's country club friends were already texting about the charity auction scandal. "You planned this," Mom accused, her perfect facade finally cracking completely. "You've been planning this for years." "I planned for protection," I corrected. "I gathered evidence in case I ever needed it. You're the ones who made it necessary. You're the ones who proved that blood doesn't make family." The legal team Marcus had assembled was efficient and thorough. Documents were served, statements were taken, and within an hour it was clear that my family's attempts to extort money had failed spectacularly. Worse, their own crimes were now exposed to the world. "This is all your fault." Jennifer turned on our parents. "You always said Ashley was nothing, and we believed you. We could have had a relationship with her. We could have been part of her success." "Could we have?" I asked. "When was I ever anything more than your punchline? When did any of you ever show me genuine love that wasn't connected to what I could do for you?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Alexander's security team arrived to escort Emma and me out. As we prepared to leave, I turned back one final time to the family that had shaped me through their cruelty. "You know what the saddest part is," I said. "I would have shared everything with you. My success, my wealth, my life. All you had to do was love me for who I was, not what I wore or what I earned. All you had to do was be a real family." "Ashley, wait," Dad called out. "We can fix this. We can be better." "No," I said simply. "You can't, because you're not sorry for how you treated me. You're sorry I'm not going to fund your lifestyles. And that's the difference between us." 6 months later, I stood in my Vera Wang wedding dress, looking out at the assembled guests in the botanical garden Alexander and I had chosen for our ceremony. The October sun filtered through amber leaves, casting everything in a golden glow that felt like nature's blessing on our union. But it wasn't the setting or the designer dress or the champagne that cost more per bottle than my old Honda that made this moment perfect. It was the people surrounding us, our chosen family, who loved us for exactly who we were. Emma stood beside me as my maid of honor, radiant in a dress she'd helped design herself. The shy, broken girl who'd sought me out at Easter had blossomed into a confident young woman. Her emancipation had been granted swiftly, the judge taking one look at the evidence of emotional abuse and agreeing she was better off in my care. She'd started at a prestigious arts academy, her writing flourishing in an environment that nurtured rather than crushed her creativity. Just last week, she'd won a National Young Writers Award for a piece about finding your true family. My biological family was notably absent from the guest list, but their presence haunted the edges of the day nonetheless. Jennifer had been disbarred after the embezzlement investigation revealed even more stolen funds. Last I heard, she was working as a paralegal in a small firm 3 states away, her designer wardrobe sold to pay restitution. Michael had lost his medical license and now worked as a pharmaceutical sales representative, the kind he used to mock at family dinners. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. My parents' fall had been the most dramatic. Dad's investment fund collapsed when his clients fled and he'd been forced to declare bankruptcy. Mom's gambling debts had finally caught up with her, and without my father's income or their house to leverage, she'd had to take a job as a receptionist at a dental office. They lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, now the kind of place they would have sneered at before. David's bigamy had led to a spectacular divorce that made local headlines. His other families had sued him for support, and Jennifer had taken him for everything in their divorce. Brittany was serving 18 months in federal prison for pharmaceutical theft. The family that had once looked so perfect from the outside had crumbled like a house of cards in a hurricane. But I didn't think about them often anymore. My life was too full of real joy to waste on old pain. The Morrison Foundation, which I'd established with Alexander's help, had already provided scholarships to 300 first-generation college students. My businesses continued to thrive, now openly under my leadership. The tech world had embraced me not as the discount rack girl, but as an innovator who understood that true value had nothing to do with surface appearances. "You ready for this?" Emma asked, adjusting my veil one final time. "I've been ready my whole life," I told her. "I just didn't know it." The ceremony was intimate, filled with people who'd known me at my lowest and celebrated me at my highest. My CFO, who'd believed in my vision when I was operating out of a studio apartment. My first virtual assistant, now a dear friend who ran her own successful company. The teenagers from the youth center where I volunteered kids who reminded me daily that everyone deserved to be seen for their potential, not their circumstances. As I walked down the aisle toward Alexander, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. Every cruel word, every dismissive laugh, every moment of feeling worthless had forged me into someone who understood that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in the lives you touched and the love you cultivated. "You look beautiful," Alexander whispered when I reached him, and I knew he meant it. Not because of the designer dress or the diamonds at my throat, but because he saw me, really saw me the way my family never had. The reception was a blur of joy and laughter, so different from those stiff family gatherings where I'd counted the minutes until I could leave. Emma gave a speech that brought everyone to tears, talking about how I'd saved her life by showing her that she was worthy of love exactly as she was. My chosen family toasted our future, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly celebrated for being myself. As the evening wound down, Alexander and I stole a moment alone on the garden's terrace. The city sparkled below us, full of possibilities and promises. "Any regrets?" he asked, knowing the weight of what I'd left behind to get here. "None," I said, meaning it completely. They taught me something valuable even if they didn't mean to. They taught me that the best revenge isn't hatred or retaliation. It's living so well, so authentically, so joyfully that their opinion becomes irrelevant. It's building a life so beautiful that their absence is a gift, not a loss. 6 months ago, I'd been the discount rack girl, mocked and dismissed by people who should have loved me unconditionally. Today, I was Ashley Morrison Chen, CEO, philanthropist, wife, sister by choice, and living proof that sometimes the family that raises you just prepares you to find the family you're meant to have. My phone buzzed with a message from one of our scholarship recipients, a young woman whose family had also told her she'd never amount to anything. She'd just been accepted to MIT, her dream school, and wanted to thank me for believing in her when no one else did. That I thought as Alexander wrapped his arms around me and Emma joined us for a group photo was true wealth. Not the millions in my accounts or the businesses bearing my name, but the knowledge that I'd taken my pain and transformed it into purpose, my rejection into redemption, my isolation into inspiration for others walking the same difficult path. The discount rack girl was gone, but I'd carry her with me, always a reminder that your worth is not determined by those who refuse to see it, but by your own relentless refusal to believe their limitations. She'd taught me that sometimes the greatest gift your family can give you is showing you exactly who they are, so you can choose to become exactly who you're meant to be. The stars came out above the garden, and I made a wish not for myself, but for every person out there feeling worthless in their family's eyes. May they find their strength, their voice, their chosen family, and their own perfect revenge, a life so beautiful it needs no vindication. If you've made it this far in my story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been the black sheep in your family? The one who didn't fit the mold? Share your story in the comments below because I truly believe that our scars become our strength when we share them with others who understand. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more tales of triumph over family betrayal. And please share this video with anyone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by their family's opinion. Thank you for letting me share my truth with you. And remember, sometimes the family that hurts you is just preparing you for the family that will heal you. Until next time, this is Ashley reminding you that you are enough exactly as you are.